Kings fans, I know you're hungry, starving even, for the Sacramento Kings to make a trade. But how should Scott Perry approach a potential trade? Should he be patient and hold for the maximum value he can get for his guys? Or should he just take whatever he can get and make a change as soon as possible? Damien Barling from ESPN 1320 joins me to discuss that right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And common sense would say when trading players away that you want to get the absolute best value you can in return. But we're also living in a reality where the Sacramento Kings are 5-16. We are just now starting the month of December. This season has been an absolute catastrophic disaster, and we still have 2 months to go before the trade deadline itself. Why waste those 2 months by keeping the same veterans and the same roster together when it's clearly not going anywhere? And there are players on this roster that are directly getting in the way of some of the younger players that have an opportunity to actually be a part of your future, getting more playing time. I know there are a lot of Kings fans that are like, yep, if you could tell me DeMar DeRozan's gone, or Zach LaVine's gone, or Domantas Sabonis is gone, or any combination of those three is gone, I will take whatever I can get for those guys, and I will drive them to the airport myself. I understand that approach, but Scott Perry is also thinking long-term and doesn't want to just make a knee-jerk reaction and trade guys away for the sake of making trades, although arguably making a trade, period, is what this organization needs right now. So how should the Kings approach it? Damien Barling from ESPN 1320's D-Lo and Casey. He joins me right now. We're going to dive deep into that conversation. We'll talk about Zach LaVine and his future here in Sacramento if the Kings aren't able to trade him away. And, of course, we'll talk about the sticky, interesting situation for Keon Ellis and his future that just seems like it's less and less likely that he'll be a long-term Sacramento King. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Well, we made it to December. Barely. Kings are 5-16. They used to say it's not till like after Christmas when the season really starts, but season just feels over for the Sacramento Kings at this point. Damien Barling, the D-Lo and Casey from ESPN 1320 joining me here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Damien, I don't know. I don't know where the Kings could possibly look to go from here to find any optimism other than like starting to play the young guys more. And I've talked a lot about recently, just they start to wean some of these veteran minutes off as much as you possibly can and give them to the young guys, spread them amongst the young guys. But that's a lot easier said than done. And it's hard to take minutes away from a guy named DeMar DeRozan or a guy named Zach LaVine or Russell Westbrook or Domantas Sabonis when he returns in a handful of weeks. So that opens the door to the conversation of trades. And I think this fan base is starving for some sort of trade to happen, regardless of it is, to a point where I think even people are at the point, it's like, I don't care about getting maximum value. Just get one of these guys out of here or some of these guys out of here and take what you can get. So I wanted to hyper focus on that point with you, because holding for value might mean not moving any of these guys until early February. February 5th is the trade deadline. Might wait till a contender goes, oh, wait, we need DeMar DeRozan or we need Malik Monk. So we'll give you a first-round pick or a solid rotational player for those guys. But can the Kings stomach another 2 months of what they're going through? Where do you fall kind of on that as of right now, December 1st, teeter-totter of, I'm okay with just, well, put our heads down and get through this, and Scott Perry can hold for the value versus, you know what? If you can get anything for any of these guys right now, call it in, send them out there, and let the rotations adjust properly.
Yeah, I think you've got to find a way to keep your fan base interested and engaged with your team. And this particular version of the Sacramento Kings is incredibly unlikable and extremely disliked. This fan base will show up, they'll cheer, they'll do all of that, but you'll also have incidents like what we saw last Wednesday, I think it was at the Phoenix game, or at the Golden One Center against Phoenix. I think you'll see that, and it just speaks to the level of frustration that this fan base has right now with this current crop of players. I'm not of the mindset that you have to have like a hockey substitution with all of these guys going out at once. Like, I don't even think, and I know I'm a bit biased, but I don't even think you have to take Russell Westbrook out of the lineup. I think he's done a fine job. He had an awful game against Memphis, but still, like, overall, like, I don't question whether Russell Westbrook's, effort is there. I think if you asked Kings fans their preference, they'd probably much rather move on from Dennis Schroeder. I think if you look in hindsight, Kings fans would much rather have Russell Westbrook as their starting point guard on that contract and Dennis Schroeder not even here. I think, though, Matt, you have to start making changes. And the more games that pass that you don't, and maybe this is an understanding between Doug Christie and Scott Perry and the members of this front office, but the more games where Doug puts out that same starting lineup, the more I start to scratch my head. He made the one change with Russell Westbrook and Dennis Schroeder, and Dennis being out is a big deal. Like, Dennis had been really, really good for that second unit. So him not playing recently, especially over this 3-game stretch in which they've lost, it's not a small thing. I know we focus on Domantas Sabonis in his absence, but Dennis has been really good coming off of the bench. So without having him out there, it's been really problematic. But I think the one that I'll probably harp on, and I think that a lot of Kings fans will harp on, is Zach Lavine. Zach Lavine's effort is questionable from play to play. And maybe in his mind, his effort isn't questionable. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not big into questioning guys' efforts. I think that's a really fine line to walk. And sometimes we use the word effort when a player is just playing bad. But Zach sometimes feels like he's disengaged when he's on the basketball floor. Like, I can visually see that just as a fan. And that's tough. And that is really, really tough for this fan base. And I think if you're Doug, you can start there. You can start moving Zach Lavine to the bench and trying something else in that position. Even with Domantas Sabonis out, like, this season, stunningly, I can't believe this season is already over. Yeah. Like 5 and 16? Like, we're 21 games into this year, 5 and 16. They're on pace to win like 19 or 20 games or something like that. Even in the worst case scenario, I did not envision anything like this. Like, this is stunningly bad in my mind. And I think if you have to start, in my opinion, you have to start doing something, and you start with Zach Lavine. The one that I think that you can hold on to, and when I say start with something, you've got to move Zach Lavine to the bench and start figuring out some other things, whether it's Neek, whether it's Keon, or whatever it winds up being. Like, you start there. DeMar, I think you can continue to have here with no issues for a while. And DeMar is the one who I think will probably return you the most come February. I think there's probably teams who are looking right now like, we might need to make this decision. The Sacramento Kings aren't the only franchise whose season is slipping away. Their stakes are a fraction of as high as the Los Angeles Clippers are. Like, the Clippers with the Kings, we can look at a bad organization and bad draft history. We do all of that and be pessimistic. The Clippers can't even be pessimistic. They have no way of improvement. They don't have draft picks. They don't have cap space. They have nothing. So them getting better immediately is vitally important to what they can do moving forward. With that said, like, I just think you have to wait it out. But you have to be willing to make changes. And so far, it looks like Doug hasn't been willing to make too many changes, though I do want to, I'll credit him for the Russell Westbrook Dennis Schroeder swap. But It's going to be a long road ahead, man. I think no matter what, whether you sell off parts for cheap as quickly as possible, or you hold out, for the next couple of months, like it's just going to be a tough season to get through.
I think the point that you're laying out, which is what I wanted to dive into, is there's no blanket statement answer for it. It's case by case, right? In the case of Zach Lavine specifically, and you might even throw Domantas Sabonis into this as well, because of how bad their contracts are or significant their contracts are. That might be a scenario where if anybody offers you anything to potentially get you off of that contract that doesn't also financially put you in a tough spot for the next handful of years, maybe you have to take back a bad contract for the next year for Domantas Sabonis or Zach Lavine. But in those cases, maybe that's one where the Kings go, okay, now I'm willing to just pull the trigger on anything.
See, those aren't bad trades to me, though. Those to me, the scenario you just laid out, those are maximum value trades to me, because you have to get something out of it. And the idea that you're going to trade Domantas Sabonis or Zach Lavine or even DeMar DeRozan and get some young player who's really going to catapult your franchise, like you're going to pull off the Oklahoma City trade and get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for one of those guys. Like that's not right. Realistic. So the scenario that you just laid out, in my opinion, that's a high value trade right there. You're getting something back that ultimately results in cap space. It ultimately results in money falling off of the books, and then you have the ability to absorb a contract from a star who wants out, or you have the ability to absorb some sort of deal for a good player for whatever reason. Maybe it's a team giving up on what they are doing. Maybe it's just a situation like I always use this doesn't happen very often, but the Dame Lillard situation. Dame put himself in a predicament where he had no leverage at all. Like he signed a maximum contract. He had his contract hadn't even kicked in yet by the time that he requested a trade. That eliminates all your leverage. So if a team either has the ability to, which Milwaukee did, combine contracts and send them out, you're in great shape. But you also have a situation where it's like, well, we have the ability to absorb that $30 million, $40 million contract. So we can send you this and you send us that in return. Now, again, that situation doesn't happen very often, but should one come about, the Sacramento Kings would be in a prime spot for it.
Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on the action as it unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the games start to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up or cool down. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility within a game. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. DeMar DeRozan, I'll even throw Malik Monk into this conversation too. Those are the guys that outside of like a Keegan Murray, who I do not believe is available, but I do believe teams are always going to be calling about. And I don't think anybody should be untouchable, by the way, on this roster. If Scott Perry gets an offer for Keegan Murray that he can't refuse, he should take it. And I love Keegan. But I just don't think that offer is coming. But outside of like Keegan, I think Malik and DeMar are the two guys that Scott should be the most should hold on to the most, or should push the most for maximum value. DeMar, because I do believe that there are teams out there that absolutely can use what he brings. And it's not just the teams that you laid out, like the Los Angeles Clippers, whose seasons are slipping away and they need to do something desperately just to try and revitalize their season. There's also teams towards the top that are looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder and going, what do we do? Like, we can't we can't stop this team, or we need something else. I don't know if DeMar DeRozan is the answer necessarily, but maybe a capable Hall of Fame caliber scoring punch, veteran presence off of your bench to bring some extra scoring can help shorten that gap between OKC and another contender. And I kind of look at Malik Monk the same way. I also look at Malik the same way I kind of look at Russell Westbrook, in terms of like, they bring the energy. There's no doubt that Malik was the catalyst to the second unit playing as well as they did last night to give the Kings a chance to win that game against the Memphis Grizzlies. So in the case of like Malik and DeRozan specifically, D-Lo, I'm more comfortable waiting until February to get those deals done. That being said, even with Malik, I hope those deals do get done. Like, I hope by February 6th, we're talking about you got some sort of value in return for those guys. I wouldn't hate it if Malik is still on the Sacramento Kings by any means, but I'm willing to be a little more patient with those guys than I am with, I guess, a Zach Lavine or even a Dennis Schroeder at this point.
I don't even want Malik traded.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, that's one, when you talk about, you know, I have a lot of frustrations as you're aware. And, you know, hopefully some crossover listeners between Locked On Kings and D'Lo and Casey are aware. There are some things that just absolutely frustrate me about Domantas Sabonis. I do believe he's a valuable player, but his contract is really what becomes problematic, right? It made a lot more sense when De'Aaron Fox was here and you felt like you had your two pillars that you were building around. The second De'Aaron was gone was the second Domantas Sabonis's contract didn't make any sense. And I get the hardships in trying to move that deal, the difficulties in trying to move that deal. You know, Zach Lavine's contract will probably be a little bit more attractive next season when you have a team who is willing to, they feel like they're a score away. Like the Los Angeles Clippers might love the idea of Zach Lavine more this offseason or more at this time next year, when they know, all right, if it doesn't work, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. The $48 million is gone. We're clean after that. We're good. It limits what Sacramento should do, because you should not take anything back that expired past next year. Like because that money is there either way. That money is there if Zach Lavine is on the contract and rolls off, or if someone you trade for is there and rolls off. But you can't acquire more money in exchange for that trade. The Malik one is one I just don't understand. Malik makes, what is it, 18 million?
18, yep.
Really, what? I know that this team stinks, but the value of his $18 million contract for what he's done so far this year, he is the biggest fan favorite. And it's not like it's him and Russell Westbrook. They are the biggest fan favorites. That's not a knock on Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray just doesn't have a very bombastic personality. I think everybody knows, you know, Keegan is, you know, one of the future, hopefully, pillars of this franchise. But like Malik and Russ are they're the heartbeat of this team. They're the guys that get fans, you know, really excited. Russell Westbrook, you know, Malik Monk threes, you know, Kenny coined this a couple of years ago. Malik Monk threes hit different. They sound different inside the Golden One Center. The sound from a Sacramento Kings three and the sound from Malik Monk threes are different. And I know you were all over this story this past offseason. I didn't understand it then, and I don't understand it now. I know we kind of, you know, hear things about what's going on behind the scenes and how this person feels about this and this and this and this. And that that's all fine. But when it comes to constructing a basketball team, I believe Malik Monk can be a valuable part of it. I don't think he's a pillar. I don't think he's a foundation piece, but he's a guy that you want on the team. And I can't figure out why they don't. But yeah, like, I don't know, given what happened this offseason, I'm not sure that the value you're talking about is ever going to be there. Like, I don't know. This offseason around Malik Monk was so weird from the sense that the Sacramento Kings wanted to move him, or at least it appears they wanted to move him, and weird that it appeared there were no takers. I don't know. That's one I'm hoping doesn't get done, because when you talk about the way guys have played this year, yeah, you know, if you want to transition to something else, that's the Lavine and the DeMar Dennis, that's perfectly fine with me. Give me Malik, give me Russ, and give me Neek, and give me those guys out there with Keegan, and then do whatever else you want to after that. But I don't think I'm with you in DeMar. DeMar's the one I think you can very comfortably, safely. There are some things that DeMar has done this year where I've questioned his effort a little bit. But in the end, I do think DeMar is a professional. And if him and Scott have a talk about, hey, we're going to try to do what's best for you. We just saw the Minnesota Vikings release Adam Thielen, put out a statement like, he wants more playing time out of respect for him. We're going to do this. The Kings and DeMar could do the same thing. Mm-hmm. You can't release them, but you could do the same exact thing where it's like, yeah, but you do it privately. DeMar, we're going to do everything we can to get you to a contender, or to get you to someone who really wants to utilize you in a different way. And if all else fails, we'll get you to Los Angeles and you get down there with the Clippers because they're desperate to get something going. Like we'll work that out. You can have that conversation with DeMar, in my opinion, and remain in a good spot. But Malik, just hold on to Malik.
I feel like Malik was one of a few players who had their reputations or their values negatively impacted by the market and the apron system. Because I always viewed Malik over the summer as, it's not that Malik's not a valuable player around the league. It's that teams don't have money to spend. They're scared to add more money. And the biggest problem with Malik in terms of value is the fact that he was under contract for 3 more years, regardless of what the money was on those on that contract. He makes $20.1 million next season, then $21.5 million player option the following year, which I think he'll probably exercise. That's a pretty standard contract.
Yeah, that doesn't feel crazy to me
for an established rotation player in the league, which is one of the reasons why I feel like maybe now that we're out of the off season and you're 1 year closer to that contract being up, and we can see what Malik Monk brings to a team like that. The same scenario where I talked about wanting to have that punch off of the bench in a DeMar DeRozan, you can make that exact same argument, maybe an even stronger one for Malik Monk and the energy that he brings offensively for a second unit that I think a number of contenders would love to have to push through a potential playoff series. So, I mean, do you agree with me in the, again, outside of Keegan Murray, do you agree with me that DeMar DeRozan and Malik Monk are the two guys where if Scott Perry is analyzing his roster and going, who can I get the most value for realistically, they're the whatever order you want, they're the combination of number 1 and number 2?
With DeMar, yes, absolutely. With Malik, I struggle because they had a whole offseason and no one jumped at it. Now, the off-season trades are very different than in-season trades, right? Like sure. There are plenty of teams right now who are in a bad predicament. There are plenty of teams right now that lost a scorer, lost a player, and they need to react in a way that they might not have anticipated, back in July or August or whatever. So there could be some validity to that, but it also is one that makes me wonder if someone, and this might be a specific scenario where someone gets ultra desperate and goes and tries to acquire Zach Lavine. That like the only team that truly comes to mind is, I think there were rumors about Milwaukee last week.
Yep.
The Clippers are another one, with what's going, they lost Bradley Beal. They were hoping for a little scoring punch from him. You never know on a day-to-day basis what's going on with Kawhi Leonard. So you have James Harden in the year of 2025 trying to hold that team up by himself. And clearly you could see it's not working. 2.5 months ago, the Clippers look like, they didn't look as deep as like Denver did, certainly not as deep as Oklahoma City did. But from a top to bottom roster, it looked like, hey, like they could be dangerous. Like they could be extremely problematic. And that depth has fallen apart. That team just hasn't clicked, and they have no recourse to get better. Like they have, meaning they have no incentive to tank. They have no incentive to lose games. Like they have to find a way to correct ship now during the season. And they're a team who I wonder if they got a little desperate. Would they try to make an acquisition for a big time scorer, a guy who if I'm the only thing that stops is if I'm an opposing general manager, I don't know what gets Zach Lavine motivated. I genuinely don't. Like I long for the days of being frustrated by questioning De'Aaron Fox's effort, because De'Aaron, it was always it's like, man, I never questioned De'Aaron Fox's effort. It was more like, Oh, I don't think he cares this game. Like he's just going to he's not going to take this game. He's going to let the game come to him. And if that means going to Malik, or that means going to Domas, or it means going to kick it, he's just going to do that. And then maybe he'll turn it on. Maybe he won't. Like, who knows? I don't think I questioned whether De'Aaron cared. My thing with De'Aaron was always I questioned whether he knew he could be like great, like absolutely great. Zach Lavine, I truly trust. Question whether he gives a crap. So that's the only thing that doesn't put him near the top of the list for me. So it's definitely no question to me DeMar at number 1. And I don't even know if there's a number 2. Like I just can't get over the lack of a market for Malik this offseason. So it's hard for me to put him at number 2.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineups, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states. That includes California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy score, field goal attempts, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy for that night or a specific game. And the new Stacks feature lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on a quarterback's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards if you feel like they're going to have a big game on that particular day. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy. So when you win money, you get that money fast. It keeps everything flowing. Download the Prize Pick app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. We've always talked about Zach Lavine as if he was going to pick up that $48 million player option, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and he's essentially got another year left on his deal after this season. We've always talked about, because who could walk away from that much money? Zach will never get that much money again per year in his career. That being said, do you buy any of these whispers or this potential of Zach and his team looking around and going, maybe elsewhere I could get more years for the high $30s million and more longevity? Or we'll add just another element to it. With what's been going on here in Sacramento, is there a side of Zach that just goes, F this, I don't want another year here. I'm declining my option and I'm choosing where I go next. Like, is there any validity to maybe even if the Kings don't trade or can't find a trade for Zach Lavine, he just might pack his bags and leave anyway?
So are both things possible? Yes, absolutely. I think both things are very, very possible. I do think there are teams that might be interested in Zach Lavine at a lower dollar figure per year, over the course of a 2 or 3 year stretch. Yeah, absolutely. I believe that's true. I wondered if, thinking about this, as that Memphis game was coming to a conclusion and it was clear that final, pop from Sacramento was never going to happen. If you start, because I've been asking for Doug to make a starting lineup change for specifically focused on Zach Lavine for a little while now. And I wondered if this is I'm not really a big fan of this happening. Like sometimes, like was it Houston, I think, did it to Carmelo where they made a trade. Carmelo was playing really well, and then they just told him to go home. Like, hey, just go home. We'll figure something out for you. And they didn't. It was like they were like some old vendetta they were getting even with. With Zach, I feel like maybe if you put him to the bench, you take away his playing time. Maybe that second scenario you presented where he goes, I don't 48 million. I don't need another year of this. Like, I know I can get a contract out there. The good part about that is Rich is going to do his due diligence. Like, he's going to know pretty early whether Zach Lavine is going to have a market out there. And I think both of those scenarios are very, very possible. And if I'm Sacramento, I welcome them.
But if you're Scott Perry, you're also, again, picking that fight with a Rich Paul client. And do you want to potentially tick off Rich Paul by sending his client to the bench and basically forcing him to leave in that sense?
But that's the difference to me between the likes of a Scott Perry and perhaps a Monty McNair in that Rich, I think, can approach Scott and, hey, man, we're trying to trade him. We're trying to get him out of here. We're 5-16. We're going nowhere. There's nothing we can do. There's no point in having him out there. I give you my word. We're trying to trade him. We're not trying to oust him. We're not punishing him. We're trying to trade him, but it doesn't make sense to have him out there playing 38, 40 minutes a night when we've got Nate Clifford out here who we're desperate to get some minutes. Now, if you can help us navigate this trade, by all means, find a suitor and we'll do everything we can to get this done. But this is just the direction that we have to go right now. And I feel like Scott Perry can relay that to Rich Paul. I feel like Scott Perry can do that, relay that message in a way that keeps his relationship with Clutch Sports strong. I'm not confident that the other front office could have done that, but I am confident that this current front office could do it. And it's just Rich, sorry, man. Like we're not good. We're not good. We're not good with Zach Lavine out there playing 40 minutes. So we're going to try something different. He's still going to play. He's still going to play every night as long as he's healthy. But we have to get our other guys out there to get some minutes and get some reps because this season feels lost for us.
Well, in addition to that, and Scott's relationship with Rich Paul and agents around the league, I think, truthfully, one of the biggest benefits of having Scott Perry here in Sacramento is going to be navigating the end of the short Zach Lavine era here in Sacramento, because a day is coming where you and I on our programs are going to talk about the Kings traded De'Aaron Fox for blank, and whatever Zach Lavine turns into, or maybe it turns into Zach Lavine simply walking away, and the Kings traded De'Aaron Fox for whatever that was. That experiment was Zach Lavine, and the Kings organization is going to have to own that, but Scott Perry doesn't, and Scott's not tied to Lavine in that way. So Scott can do what needs to be done with Lavine without the conscience of, oh God, I got to optically save a move that I made that I never should have made a year ago, which is what Monty McNair and by extension Kings ownership Vivek Ranadive, they'll have to kind of live with that a little bit. But I do find, again, I'm fully expecting to have that episode where we're just like, well, here's what the De'Aaron Fox trade turned into, and it's doom and gloom. But at least the general manager currently is not basing his decision off of that aspect of I got to save face or I got to make this work in some way, shape, or form because I was the one who traded De'Aaron Fox for Lavine.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. He's essentially kind of clean on this. He's like, he can literally walk in and go, man, I bought the house. I bought the house like as sight unseen. Like I've got to clean up the mess that's here. I've got, plumbing that needs to be redone. The backyard needs to be fixed. Like we've got integrity issues in the walls. Like I've got to fix all of that. But that was the circumstance in which I bought this house. And Zach Lavine, he's the plumbing problem. Like he is the massive expense that you have to fix when you buy a house with some issues or you buy a house as is, sight unseen. And yeah, he has the ability to be like, hey, I wasn't a part of that deal, but I knew I had to get this deal correct. And yeah, that's the task ahead of him.
Well, one thing Scott Perry will have to wear is what happens with Keon Ellis. And D'Lo, we could do a whole podcast just off of this conversation alone. I'll sneak it in at the end here. Keon, I don't know how a breakup or a departure is not inevitable at this point. I mean, you had Keon play last night. He was +9 in the 6-minute stretch that the Kings played really well in that first quarter and a little tiny bit in the start of the second quarter. Didn't come back in for the rest of the game. And a conversation about Keon really since Mike Brown was fired is how much does the organization value him? Mike certainly saw some things that limited Keon's playing time, although Mike would tell you I was the one that gave Keon his first opportunity.
He sure will.
And here we are now, Doug Christie and Scott Perry, not only not giving Keon Ellis an extension this past offseason for the reasons that he had. Now Keon is still barely getting any sort of playing time. If I'm Keon Ellis, if I'm Keon Ellis's advisor, I'm telling him, man, find your value in the open market this summer. Some team's going to value you. We'll see how much money they give you. I don't know if it's going to be $10+ million, but you could probably get more than the $2 million you're making right now. And the other caveat to that conversation, D-Lo, is, well, you don't want to lose him for nothing, so try and trade him. But because he only makes $2 million, what can you trade him for? Unless you're adding him on top of a DeRozan or a Lavine or somebody else to sweeten the deal a little bit to get something back. So it just feels like inevitable. That's where we're headed at this point.
Yeah, I think, but like the Keon Ellis thing is very confusing. You wonder, like, why do multiple front offices and multiple coaches see him in a way that fans don't? But more importantly, you ask why multiple front offices and multiple coaches seem to think differently than a lot of people around the league seem to think. Now, this could all just be talking. It could be posturing. It could ultimately mean nothing, because when push comes to shove, how many of these organizations are going to offer Keon Ellis a contract? I know if I'm Keon, and I know if I'm representing Keon, I'm out. Like, there is no circumstance that I can think of, if I'm Keon Ellis's representative, where I'm encouraging him to stay in Sacramento for a multitude of reasons. My brother, get your ass out of here. You have full control over what you can do this offseason. Get out, run fast away from this organization, because it's not a knock on Scott Perry. It's not to say that he can't like fix this or do this, but they've set the tone. You talk about marks for Scott Perry, like in the way this thing went in the offseason with Keon Ellis. Scott's got a couple of marks right now, because the Dennis Schroeder thing doesn't look good. In relation, the Jonas Valanciunas thing looks really, really bad right now.
True.
And so Scott's first offseason is a very firm F. It's not, oh, well, no, we'll wait and see what happens with Keegan. No. It's an F. And he's got a long way to go to improve that grade. We're not nearing midterms or anything like that. Like, he still has time to bring that grade up, but his isolated grade for this past offseason, and part of that is we don't really know what Neek is yet. We think Neek is a solid rotational player, and it's like, great, you drafted a solid rotational player on a team that desperately needs guys to play on it. So, he's got a lot of work to do, and he needs to, hit a couple of home runs, couple of triples, hit some RBIs here. He needs to drive some run-ins to get that batting average up, man, because it is rough right now. But the Keon thing, regardless of how Sacramento feels about him, I think it's gotten to the point where that doesn't even matter. If I'm Keon Ellis, or I'm Keon Ellis's representative, I'm gone.
We'll wrap up with this. Though I have one like hypothetical dream positive scenario for Keon Ellis staying in Sacramento. You said you don't have any circumstance. I've got one, and I need you to tell me if it's just starry-eyed fantasy land or not. Is there a scenario, D-Lo, where at the deadline they move DeMar, or they move Lavine, or multiple guys, and now Perry and Doug can go to Keon and go, here's your spot in the rotation. These minutes are freed up. Here's 25 minutes a night. Plus, now we can negotiate with you. Here's $10 million a year. I have no idea if they'd pay that much, but I'm just throwing it out there. Money talks too. So you put the bag in front of them right away, and you say, now I have this playing time for you, because these veterans that were in front of you, the logjam at your position is loosened or is gone. Now, do you want to commit to long-term in Sacramento? If I'm Keon, I'm still looking around going, this looks terrible, but money talk. Is that realistic, or is that like wishful thinking for a Keon Ellis fan who just wants to see him stay here?
No, to me, no, that's not unrealistic. And that's kind of how I felt at the beginning of the season, where, I wondered if maybe there was an understanding, not saying that Keon was happy with it, not saying that Keon was okay with it, just wondering if there was a scenario laid out where, hey, we're trying to maintain a little flexibility this offseason. We want you to be here. We want you to be a part of what we're doing, but we can't really offer you what you hope and what we want to right now. But if you just stick with us, we'll be able to get there. Then playing time started happening. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Like, he's getting DNPs now. Like, he's getting, halves where he's not playing. He's getting like six minutes in a game where you trailed for a lot of it. You had that, you kind of flipped was it 17-3, I think, the run at the end of the third. You kind of flipped the game there a little bit. You gave the Golden One Center a little bit of hope in that one, but ultimately, like, you never saw the floor again. That's where a lot of my questions, because if I'm Keon, to be like, hey man, this is great. I'm glad the minutes are there. I'm glad the money's there. I have some questions about exactly what you expect of me moving forward and what I wasn't doing. Keon is far from a perfect player. He does stuff regularly that absolutely drives me nuts. And admittedly, I'm a little hyper focused on him right now because I'm not, like, I can understand, like, maybe Keon isn't exactly what Kings fans think that he is, but he's not a DNP guy. He's not a guy who doesn't deserve to play basketball, especially on this basketball team. So his shortcomings or the things that he does that are a little frustrating to me, I feel like those are things that you can get through, but Sacramento appears to not, or they just feel like they have to continue to ride Lavine and DeMar through this thing. So is your scenario possible? Sure. But in that scenario, the exact way you presented it, I'm Keon and I'm his representative. I'm asking some questions before I sign that contract. And I'm making sure I know what the league has for me this summer.
Those conversations will only get louder as we get closer to the February trade deadline. D'Lo and Casey are back after the Thanksgiving holiday breaks. You can check that out from noon to 4 o'clock on ESPN 1320. D'Lo, I appreciate you taking the time before a 4-hour radio show to come here on the pod. Good luck and enjoy the conversation. We'll try and make sense of whatever this mess is in Sacramento. It's December, baby. We made it this far.
Yeah, it's the beginning. We haven't even made it to Christmas when the season really starts. I appreciate you, Matt. Thanks, man.